Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Farm Bill Craziness. We consistently, it's probably the thing we're getting asked about the most recently is what's going on with the Farm Bill, where are we at, and ever since the sort of proposed Miller Amendment was put up and all the subsequent kind of craziness around that, the Farm Bill is going through a draft process right now, and we're going to talk about that. Cythina is probably one of the most well-versed people in that right now, and talk to us about what the hell is going on with this Farm Bill, because I know everybody wants to know.
So the Farm Bill is interesting in that, I mean, even if people don't pay attention to federal legislation, right, which is what the Farm Bill is, that's the federal level, at their state, so like Texas, you have the House side, you have the Senate side, and then they have to reconcile, and that's how you get a bill passed. So it's the same thing on the federal side. So it has to pass the House, and it has to pass the Senate. And so a few months back, I want to say 2 or 3 months ago, there was a hearing, and it was the House Agriculture Committee, which is the committee that looks at, on the House side, things like the Farm Bill. They had a hearing, and I remember we were in the conference room when it was going on, and we were all kind of like paying attention to it. And so we had gotten, and when I say we, I mean our lobbying teams and the like loose coalition that we work with where we're all trying to row in the same direction. We had gotten an agreement from folks that they would, Democrats, that they would not support the Miller Amendment. And then we had a bit of a double cross because that amendment got mixed up with a bunch of other amendments that were super non-controversial, and it's en bloc voting. So they had to vote for yes or no for this group of amendments. I mean, and I think there were like 14. One of the amendments was like, take care of sick puppies. I kid you not.
Yeah, I heard somebody say like, they don't want to vote against killing puppies or something like that. And I'm like, wait, what? What the hell does that have to do with this?
Because they tied it all up, and that never happens. Like, it was just this huge double cross. So the Miller Amendment, and I think it's Mary Miller, she's from Illinois, and as you know, surprise, surprise, Illinois is a fully recreational marijuana state. So it's not that much of a shocker that an amendment to kill the hemp industry would come from a recreational marijuana state. Ah! So I'll give this to you. This is the amendment. So this is what's prohibited in her amendment.
I love how I've turned into your assistant and just read things.
Otherwise, I have to find my glasses and put them on.
I got you. Cannabinoids that are not capable of being naturally produced by cannabis sativa L plant. Cannabinoids that are capable of being naturally produced by a cannabis sativa L plant and were synthesized or manufactured outside the plant. Or quantifiable amounts as determined by the Secretary of blank tetrahydrocannabinol, including tetrahydrocannabinolic acid, or any other cannabinoids that have similar effects or are marketed to have similar effects on humans or animals as tetrahydrocannabinol.
These are all the things that are prohibited in the Miller Amendment. So if this is not a handout to the marijuana industry, what is?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the legislation that we see come through, it's obvious that it was just literally written by marijuana people trying to outlaw hemp.
Yeah, because, I mean...
You can spot it pretty quickly.
Well, the other thing is, you know this because you've talked to legislators.
And also, because it doesn't affect marijuana at all.
Shocker. Federally illegal marijuana. What? So you've talked to plenty of legislators, and you know that you go to talk to them, and very few legislators are well-versed in any particular industry, much less
they typically contact us to understand even what's going on, because this does get very nuanced and very technical legally and complicated, and you're somebody that's dealing with this on a daily basis, so it makes sense that people would reach out to you to understand what's going on. Because like if I wasn't involved in this every day and I just looked at this, I would have no clue what any of this means.
Yeah. So Mary Miller, we're meant to believe that Mary Miller, out of nowhere, had the wherewithal and the knowledge to come up with this amendment, as opposed to her recreational marijuana state.
I mean, she is on the agricultural committee.
Well, so she must be an expert. And we have one of the federal lobbyists on a call a few weeks ago. he talked about how, because, you know, we've all made trips to Washington, D.C., and we've all met with legislators and, you know, our side versus their side. And this guy was commenting, I forgot his name, but he was commenting that back in the day, you know, you go into an office, a legislator's office, and they would say, oh, the marijuana people were just here. And they say that, you know, they are part of hemp too. And, you know, all they want to see is, you know, regulations or...
Well, a lot of them have hemp in their group names.
Yeah, because they're liars. Or they just want to put, you know, they want to take hemp products off the market until they've been, you know, tested and they've had 40 years. Like marijuana
Make sure they don't have Chinese pesticides?
Yes, just that. Make sure it doesn't have Chinese pesticides.
Yeah, because that's a thing.
And he said, and so before, you know, and it's true, you'd go in and they were always like, yeah, these people, they say they're on your side, but, you know, they just want to see some regulation. And he said, but now... He said, you go into the office and they're like, yeah, marijuana wants to kill you. Like they were just in here and they said, wipe out the hemp side. And it like, they're not even trying to hide it anymore, which is really something. Anyway, so we have this Mary Miller amendment that gets put in there. And then just to make things a little bit more fun, it goes from the House Ag Committee, it goes to the House Committee on Rules, where is this guy's name? I don't want to forget it, Harris. He provides his own amendment that also bans hemp products. So now we have two in two different committees.
Well, so, all right, so where is Mary Miller? She's from Illinois, and is she a Democrat or Republican?
I think she's a Republican.
And then where is Harris from?
That I have to look up.
Okay, and then do you know he's probably Republican too?
He is Republican,
Harris,
Maryland.
Andy Harris?
Yeah, Andy Harris, Maryland, Republican. What does Maryland have?
He's the chair
that
of the
Illinois
House
has?
What?
Come on.
Marijuana.
You make me so proud. So we have
Illicit marijuana.
Illicit marijuana, federally illegal marijuana. So we have representatives from two different states that have recreational marijuana, each offering up amendments that kill the hemp industry.
Well, I guess those are technically his constituents, or their constituents.
Technically. I mean, except for all the people who have hemp businesses.
That's true.
Right? Except for them. So he offers one up. And then Nancy Mace offers up an amendment. And so does McGarvey, I think. Yes, McGarvey. And this article has all the affiliations and all that other stuff. But McGarvey offers up more like responsible regulation type whatever to protect the hemp industry. Nancy Mace comes in and she says, strike the whole section. She like doubles down. Lewis is over there pumping his fist in the back. Her whole amendment is strike section 760.
Well, that's bullshit.
That is the entirety of her amendment.
I love this. This makes me so happy.
So,
after reading 17-page bills and amendments and all this stuff,
here's Miller's bill.
I love this.
Yeah.
This is beautiful.
And so Mace...
It's a work of art.
So we have...
Three words. And a period.
Because...
Perfect.
Here's the thing. They still have to pass an appropriations package, right? I think it's a continuing resolution because the federal government's budget starts, I think, October 1. It's not a calendar year. It's October 1. So the country has to be funded between October 1 and December 31st if nothing passes. So that's the continuing resolution bill. And that's why sometimes we have a government shutdown because they don't pass the CR in time and then they can't pay the employees at that time. Anyway, yes, that's how it works. You're really sorry when TSA can't get paid, right? So anyway, so we have the Farm Bill, which probably nothing is going to happen to it until the end of the year. But in the meantime, we have the appropriations package where they could try to do some funny stuff, right? The CR. So the question here is, and it's a legit question, why do federal legislators favor one industry over another industry?
Political contributions.
Political contributions. So the marijuana folks have been at this for 50, 60 years, right? Because they've been trying to get marijuana legalized all that time. And they've gotten very good at the lobbying game. They've gotten very good at donating money. And here comes the brand new hemp industry, which, I mean, if we're being honest, it's like a handful of companies that pay for everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, the big ticket stuff.
Yeah.
It's a handful of companies that foot the bill for everything.
Literally.
Yeah.
There's probably about 4 or 5 companies that fund everything that happens on the hemp side.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, hey, what do you think about a lawsuit in this particular state? And I said, well, Hometown Hero will not be footing the bill for you. So if you want that lawsuit, you need to make that happen. So anyway, so marijuana has gotten very good at political donations. And they have more lobbyists on the Hill than we do. They have more money to donate than we do.
Well, they also have publicly traded companies that they can offer stock in.
In Canada. Yeah. Tell me one marijuana company whose stock has gone up significantly.
I think Truly went from 60 to 9.
60 cents?
$60 to $9.
That's not... Okay. Okay, go on.
Yeah.
But they... And so we're back to this same thing. So we have the marijuana people doubling down. And let me tell you what. My theory is that all the small marijuana companies will get wiped out.
That's
right?
their intent.
By the MSOs.
That's their intent.
And the MSOs want there to be 3 or 4 companies that dominate the market.
Correct.
Right? And then they'll figure everything out, which is why hearing that the pharma people are coming after the marijuana people, it warms the cockles of my heart. It just makes me like, yeah, that's what it's like. So anyway, so the Farm Bill, there's a lot hanging in the Farm Bill. And you and I were talking earlier today, and in Texas, for example, we have the Farm Bill that we need to pay attention to. Correct. We have the lawsuit, and we have the Texas legislative session that starts in 2025.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, like, if you had unlimited pockets and you were a pharmaceutical company, what would you do? Man, that is a lot of thought. If I was a pharmaceutical company that had unlimited pockets, I would buy out all the competition or crush it the way that they're trying to do to the marijuana states, right? I would come to Texas and I would say, what does it take to dominate this market before it gets away from us? I would go to North Dakota.
Yeah, Texas would be the first state. If I was Big Pharma and I wanted to dominate the entire industry in the entire country, Texas would be the first one I would come after. Because depending on what happens in Texas, Texas is already looked at largely because of our lawsuit and the stuff that we're doing. Texas is already looked at as sort of the forefront of the hemp industry. And if Texas were to go away, there's a lot of arguments that the rest of the industry theoretically would follow and potentially be impacted.
Yeah, this is a pretty big state that gets a lot of attention. So
arguably, it's the #2 cannabis state, potentially the #2 cannabis state in the entire country. And I say that, and I say it regularly based on alcohol consumption, right? And I think there's a fair argument that the alcohol companies are obviously paying attention to this for a very specific reason, but you've got California that I think is 89 billion gallons of alcohol consumption per year. Texas is second at 59 billion.
I thought they were all just stoned on weed.
They consume a ton of alcohol in California. Texas is #2 at 59 billion, and Florida's #3 at 55 billion. And Texas is arguably the most impactful because of what's happening legislatively and with the lawsuit and with all the different things.
Now, to be clear, you can survive the Farm Bill going sideways if your state legislature does exactly what the illegal marijuana states do and say, well, we're going to allow the sale of hemp anyway.
Correct.
So you could go sideways on the Farm Bill, but most states don't have that because the marijuana folks have done such a good job of making sure that they've...
Well, most states have also adopted the USDA farm rules.
Yes.
And so if the Farm Bill... Now, question for you. If the Farm Bill changes, are the states that have adopted the Farm Bill rules already, do they have to re-adopt the new ones, or how does that work?
Yes, if there were significant changes, they would have to submit their bill.
It's not automatic. They have to go through and change them.
That's what they're supposed to do for every change that they make to the hemp program, regardless. they're supposed to submit a new bill, a new plan.
They didn't do that to us.
No.
They just put a note on the website.
So they would have to do that. So theoretically, you could survive this. But most states are in a really bad position. And there are a lot of state legislatures that are like, well, let's just wait and see what happens with the Farm Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens with the Farm Bill? To be determined. But Mace and McGarvey, woohoo! Those are our peeps. Yeah.
So this has been, the Farm Bill sort of process of updating it has been going on now for years.
It's a year behind schedule.
Yeah, and so it's still in progress. What's the expected timeline on when something will actually come into play or when something will be finalized? Because every time they propose I guess if you want to call it a draft amendment, right? Every time that gets proposed, everybody freaks out and calls me and says, look, they did this to the farm. The Farm Bill has changed. We're illegal. Like that. I'm like, no, hold on. So when are we expecting to actually see something go into play with the Farm Bill in terms of not a draft amendment, but actually being implemented?
If things keep going the way they're going, probably till the end of the year, maybe beginning of the year. I mean, listen, no guarantees. Anything can happen at any time. But all these developments have been on the House side.
What's the process? So, like the Miller Amendment, right? Mm-hmm. What's the process of that actually becoming a part of the Farm Bill? What has to happen for an amendment to actually go through and be put into change?
I'm going to give Lewis a graphic to put up that will show what the path that has to be taken is. But anything that comes out of the House side has to be approved on the Senate side.
Correct.
And our federal government is crazy dysfunctional. Also, we have an election coming up, which I know we're going to talk about later, but it has to go through. So the House has to agree. The amendment has to stay in through every committee and all the rules and then it has to go to the Senate side, and it has to be approved all through there with no changes. And every time there's a potential change, it has to go to conference, and they have to have a conversation about it.
So that's why nothing's happened.
Well, right. But it's going to be a while, and there's a whole process that it has to go through.
Yeah, because we're a year, I guess they are a year behind schedule on updating the Farm Bill at this point.
Yeah, because the fiscal year starts October 1, and it should have been done last October 1. So it's already behind, and again, because of all the dysfunction at the federal level.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to Robert Hoban.
Yes.
I love his articles. I thoroughly enjoy everything that he writes, and he's a huge advocate of the hemp industry and just really calling people out on their BS and just being straightforward about what's going on. So, Mr. Hoban, huge fan of yours. We've never met, but very big fan of yours, and thank you for doing everything that you do.
I've met him, and he's lovely. And I love the title of his article, Regulated Hemp versus Intoxicating Marijuana. Ooh, finally,
spicy.
Somebody's calling it what it is.
Spicy.
It's intoxicating marijuana, people.
I love it.
Yes. There's also some other legislators on here that we should thank. You can do it.
I got you.
Right here.
All right. We also want to give some thank you to Representative Nancy Mace, Morgan McGarvey, James Comer, Thomas Massey, Andy Barr, and Mark Pocan for their willingness to protect our thriving industry, as a quote from Brett Worley, CEO of MC Nutraceuticals. And a huge thank you to Brett as well. Brett has been a big advocate within our industry, and he's a very good friend of ours. And Brett, thank you, brother. Appreciate it as always.
So we will see what happens. There's, to your earlier point, there's a lot of plates being juggled up in the air. We'll have to see, what happens with the Farm Bill, what happens at the state legislatures. Some states are happy to just put forth, submit a new plan and just stick with whatever the feds are doing because it's less work for them. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
One last thing. Do we have any feel on what the Senate is looking like with this
stuff?
stuff?
So the Senate actually did submit their version of the Farm Bill, and it had nothing. There was nothing in there about hemp at all. And just for clarity, the Farm Bill isn't just about hemp. I mean, the Farm Bill is like 900 pages or something like that.
The part on hemp is...
It's like 7 or 8 pages out of like hundreds and hundreds of pages. So people talk about the Farm Bill, and the hemp side is getting a lot of attention, but there's so much that goes into the Farm Bill.
It is massive.
Yeah, it's massive. You want to know where your tax dollars are going? Look at government spending.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us on that discussion of the Farm Bill. Hopefully that gave you a pretty clear update of what is going on and what is to come, and happy hunting as always. Including tetrahydrocannabinol.